Close your eyes for just one moment. I mean it. Close them, and imagine that you are standing at the edge of a cliff on a clear night, with no city lights for 50 miles in any direction, and the sky above you is so alive with stars that it almost feels like a ceiling you could reach up and touch. You can see the Milky Way, that long, luminous river of light stretching from one horizon to the other. And you know, because modern astronomy has told you, that what you are looking at is not just beautiful. It is populated. It is vast beyond comprehension. The Milky Way alone contains somewhere between 100 billion and 400 billion stars. Our galaxy is one of an estimated 2 trillion galaxies in the observable universe, 2 trillion. And you are standing on a pale blue point of light so small in that context that the astronomers who have tried to map it all have sometimes needed to remind themselves that it is even there. Now open your eyes and ask yourself, in a universe that enormous, that ancient, that incomprehensibly full, what are the odds that this little world is the only one that ever mattered? The government of the United States of America answered that question, or at least began to answer it, on the 8th of May 2026. The Pentagon launched a public portal at war.gov/UFO and released 162 classified files to anyone with an internet connection. Videos, photographs, internal military memos, FBI documents, NASA archival footage from the Apollo lunar missions, in which, in the government's own careful language, unidentified phenomena are visible. Materials dating from 1944 all the way to the present day. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth stood before the press and said that these files, hidden behind classifications, had long fueled justified speculation, and that it was time the American people saw them for themselves. And then, because the government's capacity for understatement appears to be inexhaustible, he added that the public could make up their own minds about what it all means. Make up their own minds. As if 162 declassified files documenting unexplained aerial phenomena across decades of military observation was simply a matter of personal interpretation. As if what the data actually contains, objects making 90-degree turns at 80 miles per hour, bronze metallic ellipsoids materializing from bright light and vanishing instantaneously, craft demonstrating hypersonic velocities without a single heat signature or sonic boom, objects filmed near the lunar surface during the Apollo missions, as if any of that falls neatly into the category of something a reasonable person simply decides for themselves, the way they choose a preferred flavor of ice cream. Congress members who received classified briefings before the public release did not seem quite so composed. Representative Burleson described videos of objects moving at speeds that defy physics. Representative Tim Burchett, one of the most persistent voices for transparency in this entire process, posted publicly that the first drop would be big, but that in comparison to what is coming, it would be a drop in the bucket. He added 2 words that have since echoed across every corner of the disclosure community. Holy crap is coming. A second release is expected in June of 2026. What it will contain, nobody outside the classified system knows. But the language used to preview it does not suggest that what has already been released represents the most significant material. The world looked at these files and held its breath for approximately 72 hours. And then, remarkably, almost inexplicably, most of it exhaled and moved on. The headlines faded. The social media conversation drifted toward the next distraction. A civilization that had just been formally shown evidence that objects of unknown origin and technology have been operating in restricted military airspace for decades, managed within a week to largely file it under the category of interesting and return to its ordinary concerns. But not everyone moved on, and that is what I want to talk to you about today. I want to ask you something before we go any further, and I want you to answer honestly in the comments below. When you saw the news about the Pentagon releasing these files, whether it was the headlines, the videos, the congressional testimony, what was your first feeling? Not your first thought, your first feeling. Was it fear, curiosity, something that felt like recognition? Leave your answer below before we continue. I read every comment. And your answer may help someone else who is wrestling with exactly the same feeling right now. Because for the people of the Advent movement, for those who have walked with the writings of the Spirit of Prophecy, who have sat with the Great Controversy framework until it became not just a doctrine but a lens through which all of reality makes more sense. The disclosure conversation does not produce the same vertigo that it produces in those without that framework. It produces something different, something more complex than simple shock, something that might best be described as a deep, solemn recognition, layered over by a weight of urgency that this message is going to try to put into words. Today we are going to open 4 revelations from the writings of the inspired messenger, 4 things she recorded about worlds that have never fallen, worlds whose inhabitants have never tasted sin, worlds that have been watching this planet with an intensity of interest that we are only beginning to have the conceptual vocabulary to describe. And we are going to place those 4 revelations alongside what the 2026 disclosure files are forcing the secular world to begin contemplating for the first time in public. Before we do that, I want to speak to you directly for a moment, as a brother and as a pastor. This channel is here because brothers and sisters who believe in the Adventist message decided that it deserves a platform that can reach people the local church may never touch. People who are searching, people who are doubting, people who are watching videos about UAP disclosure at 2 in the morning and feeling something they cannot name and wondering whether anyone in the religious world has anything real to say about it. If that is you, or if you know someone like that, please share this message right now. Subscribe to this channel and activate the notification bell so you never miss a new message. Like this video, because it matters for how many people the platform shows it to. And if you are carrying something, a prayer request, a name, a situation that is heavier than you want to carry alone, leave it in the comments. We pray over every one of them. This is a real ministry of intercession, not a performance. I also need to be honest with you about something. YouTube has, without explanation or appeal, significantly reduced the reach of Christian channels in this season. This ministry stays on the air because of the generous faithfulness of brothers and sisters who have decided it matters. In the description and the pinned comment, you will find our devotional study material, a resource that has genuinely transformed the prayer lives of hundreds of families, and that makes it possible for us to continue producing content like this. For those watching from Brazil, the LivePix support link is in the description, and if you are on mobile, the QR code is on your screen right now. Every subscriber, every share, every purchase, every direct support through LivePix, each one arrives here as a blessing from the Lord, and we intercede in prayer over every person who stands with us. And now, let us open the 4 revelations. The first revelation is the most foundational, and without understanding it, the other 3 cannot be properly seen. It is this: the universe is not a collection of empty space punctuated by rocks and gas. It is a populated creation governed by the law of God, inhabited by beings who have lived in unbroken obedience to that law since the moment of their creation. The inspired writer stated it plainly in the Review and Herald of March the 1st, 1881. Millions of worlds are inhabited. Not might be, not could be, are. Should all the inhabitants of this little world refuse obedience to God, she wrote, he would not be left without glory. He could marshal the starry host of heaven, the millions of worlds above, to raise a song of honor and praise and glory to his name. Millions of worlds, inhabited, singing. And lest any reader imagine that this was simply the theological speculation of a 19th century writer who had no access to the kind of cosmological knowledge that modern astronomy has developed, consider what she added in the Maranatha devotional compiled from the Review and Herald of September the 25th, 1900. She wrote that many seem to have the idea that this world and the heavenly mansions constitute the universe of God. Not so. God has worlds upon worlds that are obedient to his law. These worlds are conducted with reference to the glory of the Creator. Worlds upon worlds, obedient to his law, conducted with reference to the glory of the Creator. That is a picture of a universe that is not merely physical. It is a universe that is moral, structured, purposeful. A universe in which the law of God is not merely a set of ethical guidelines for one small civilization on one small planet, but the organizing principle of an entire creation whose scope we cannot begin to fully grasp. Now hold that picture, and then look at what the 162 declassified files describe. Objects that operate according to physics we cannot replicate, craft that appear to be impervious to the most sophisticated military technology on Earth, impervious to a Hellfire missile, impervious to radar tracking systems that cost billions of dollars to build, impervious to the sonic laws that govern every human aircraft ever constructed. Objects that move between air and water and space, as though the boundaries between those environments do not apply to them at all. What kind of physics allows that? What kind of understanding of the natural world makes those behaviors possible? The secular answer is, we do not know. The spiritual answer, for those with the great controversy framework, is, the physics of a creation whose inhabitants have been in unbroken communion with the author of natural law since the beginning of their existence will inevitably look like this to a race that has been stumbling through a fallen history for 6,000 years. Not because they are magicians, because they are faithful, because they inhabit a universe that has never been fractured by the rebellion that fractured ours, and because a creation in full alignment with its creator operates according to principles that a fallen world has barely begun to map. The second revelation is the one that the inspired writer returned to most frequently, across the widest range of her writings, and it is the one that reframes the entire UAP conversation in a way that is both sobering and deeply comforting. It is this: every eye in the unfallen universe is bent upon this world. She wrote those words in the Review and Herald of September the 29th, 1891. Every eye in the unfallen universe, bent upon this world, this atom of a world as she called it in the same body of writing, this little speck in the vast domain over which God presides. Why? Why would worlds upon worlds of noble, majestic, sinless beings direct their attention toward a planet so small and so broken and so consistently self-destructive? The answer the spirit of prophecy gives is one of the most staggering answers in all of theology. Because what is happening here is not just happening here. What is happening here is the central event of the cosmic history of the universe. Here on this atom of a world, the fundamental question about the nature of God's government is being answered. Here, a controversy that began in the courts of heaven when the brightest and most powerful of the created beings chose rebellion over obedience, a controversy that has drawn the attention of every created intelligence in the universe, is being resolved. Not in heaven. Not on some neutral ground chosen for the convenience of the observers. Here, on this field. This broken, war-torn, corrupted, beautiful, grieved, redeemed, still-standing field, and the unfallen worlds, the inhabitants of those bright and glorious places described in early writings, the noble and majestic beings who bear the image of Jesus and whose faces beam with holy joy. They are watching with the kind of intensity that you can only sustain when you understand what is actually at stake. They are watching a universe-level question be answered in real time, in the history of a real civilization, through the lives of real human beings who are choosing whether to walk with God or to walk away from Him in a world that makes walking away very easy and walking with Him very costly. Here is the question this second revelation puts to every person listening to this message. If every eye in the unfallen universe is watching this world, they are watching you. Not in a surveillance state way that should produce anxiety. In the way that a loving and astonished audience watches something that they have waited for and cared about and prayed for. Yes, that is not a category unique to us, because in the great controversy framework, intercession for this world is not limited to the human saints. The entire watching universe has a stake in how this story ends, and the way it ends depends in part on how you live the days that remain between now and the return of Christ. That is not pressure in the crushing sense. It is an invitation to understand your own life at the scale at which God actually sees it. You are not an ordinary person living an ordinary life in an ordinary time. You are a character in the final act of the most watched story in the history of creation. And the watching universe is not indifferent to how you play your part. The third revelation is the one that ties the UAP conversation most directly to the cross, and it is the revelation that should permanently change the way you understand Calvary. The inspired writer recorded it in the Review and Herald And the same truth echoes through the pages of the Desire of Ages, and it is this: when Christ cried out from the cross, "It is finished," the unfallen worlds were made secure. Read that carefully. When Christ died, something happened that was not merely about the salvation of fallen humanity. Something happened that secured the unfallen worlds themselves. The argument that Satan had been prosecuting before the watching universe, the argument that God's government was arbitrary, that his law was too demanding, that self-denial was unjustly required from created beings, that argument was answered at the cross. Answered permanently. Answered in a way that closed every remaining question in every uninhabited corner of creation. And the inhabited corners of creation understood what had been answered because they had been watching the argument unfold since the moment the rebellion began. The Desire of Ages records that all heaven and the unfallen worlds had been witnesses to the controversy. The same book records that with intense interest the unfallen worlds had watched to see whether the Father would sweep away the inhabitants of this earth in wrath, or would find a way to sustain his love for a fallen race without compromising his justice. And then Christ came, and he bore the penalty in behalf of the human race so that the throne of justice could be eternally and forever made secure. And the cross of Calvary was looked upon by the unfallen worlds, by the heavenly universe, by satanic agencies, by the fallen race, and every mouth was stopped. The cross was a cosmic event. It was not primarily a transaction between one broken human race and its creator, with the rest of the universe looking elsewhere. It was a demonstration on the most visible stage in creation of what the character of God actually is, what his government actually produces, what love that is not dependent on the worthiness of its object actually looks like. And the unfallen worlds, those beings of holy joy who had never needed grace because they had never sinned, they had never seen anything like it. And the spirit of prophecy records that as they contemplate the great price that was paid to ransom man, they are filled with amazement. They are still amazed, right now at this moment. While a government website in Washington hosts 162 declassified files and another tranche is being prepared for June, the unfallen worlds are still looking at the cross in amazement. The cross that is the science and the song of the redeemed through all eternity. The cross that will never lose its wonder, never lose its power to move even beings who live in sinless joy across worlds we have not yet mapped. And that is the cross you are carrying the story of. That is the message the three angels of the 14th chapter of Revelation are proclaiming to every nation and tribe and tongue and people. Not a historical fact about a man who died in Jerusalem 2,000 years ago. The central event in the cosmic history of a universe populated by millions of inhabited worlds. A universe that was watching, and that was secured, and that has been filled with amazement ever since. Does that change the way you feel about the message you have been entrusted with? Because it should. The UAP disclosure is pressing the secular world toward questions it does not have a framework to answer. The Adventist message is the framework. Not as a theological novelty for people who like end-time charts, as the only picture of reality large enough to hold what the disclosure files are pointing toward. The fourth revelation is the one that is most personal, the one that is addressed not to your theology, but to your daily life, your daily choices, your daily walk. And it is this: the unfallen worlds are not merely watching this earth, they are watching the people who claim to follow Christ. In the Review and Herald of September the 29th, 1891, the inspired writer wrote that every eye in the unfallen universe is bent upon those who profess to be Christ's followers. Not the world in general. Those who profess to be Christ's followers. Here in this atom of a world, she continued, an earnest warfare is going on. An earnest warfare, not a polite theological discussion, not a comfortable denominational affiliation. An earnest warfare, watched by every eye in the unfallen universe, being prosecuted on the most closely observed stage in the history of creation. And the question every uninhabited world is watching you answer is not whether you attend church on the right day, though the Sabbath truth matters enormously. It is not whether you can articulate the sanctuary doctrine, though understanding it changes everything. The question they are watching you answer is the same question the great controversy has always been about from its beginning. Can a creature of God living in a fallen world with a nature bent towards self and surrounded by a culture pulling toward every direction except faithfulness. Can that creature, by grace and by daily choice, walk closely enough with God that the character of God becomes visible in them? Can the image of Jesus be seen in a human face? Not perfectly, not without the falls and the returns and the daily dependence on grace that makes the life of a sincere Christian so different from the proud self-sufficiency that the world mistakes for strength. But genuinely, increasingly, in a way that grows more clear over time, the way the face of someone who spends long hours in the presence of a person they love begins to carry something of that person's expression. The beings on those bright and glorious worlds that the messenger of the Lord was shown, the ones whose countenances beamed with holy joy, they bore the express image of Jesus. That was not an accident of their biology. It was the natural consequence of an existence lived in unbroken communion with the God whose image they were made to reflect. They had never eaten of the forbidden fruit. They had never chosen self over God. And so the image remained clear and growing and visible in everything about them. We have eaten the fruit. That is the honest starting point for every human being born into this history. We carry the weight of a nature bent by 6,000 years of accumulated sin, and we live in a culture whose entire gravitational pull is away from the God we were made to reflect. And yet, and this is the most extraordinary thing the great controversy reveals, God has not abandoned the project of making his image visible in human faces. He has not lowered his expectation. He has not settled for a version of his creation that simply avoids the worst rather than becoming the best. He sent his Son into this broken world precisely so that what is impossible without grace would become possible through it. And the unfallen worlds are watching to see whether grace is as powerful as the cross declared it to be. They are watching your marriage. They are watching how you treat the people who cannot do anything for you. They are watching how you respond to the moment when faithfulness costs something real, and compromise would be so much more comfortable. They are watching how you carry the specific burdens of this specific season, the news about disclosure, the acceleration of events that the prophetic calendar pointed to, the quickening pace of the days in which we live. They are watching whether the people who have been given the great controversy framework live as though it is true, or whether they carry it like a doctrine and set it down when the daily choices become difficult. The disclosure files will keep coming. The second tranche is expected in June. Burchett's promise of a holy crap moment has not yet been fulfilled. What he described as coming makes May's release look like a beginning. The cultural conversation is going to continue to widen and deepen, and in that widening conversation, the world is going to need a people who can speak to it, not from a position of having all the technical answers, from a position of having the framework, the map, the story that is large enough to hold what is being revealed. That is you, if you are faithful. Let us bring all of this before God in prayer now. Father in heaven, God of worlds beyond counting, God of the unfallen and the fallen alike, God whose love held the cross together, even when the weight of an entire universe of sin was pressing down upon it. We come before you with hearts that are trying to hold the immensity of what you have shown your people. We have been given, through the spirit of prophecy, a glimpse of a universe far larger, far more alive, far more morally structured than anything the secular world has allowed itself to contemplate. We have been shown unfallen worlds filled with beings of holy joy who bear the image of Jesus and who have bent every eye they have toward this broken little planet because they know what is at stake here. We have been told that when Christ said it is finished, those worlds were made secure, and we have been told that they are watching now, watching us, those who profess to be followers of Christ, in the final act of the great controversy, watching to see whether grace is as powerful as the cross declared. Lord, we confess that we have not always lived as people who know they are being watched by a universe whose hope is bound up with ours. We have carried the great controversy framework like a library book we never quite got around to reading. We have walked past the cross on our way to the next distraction and forgotten, for stretches of time that we are embarrassed to admit, what it cost and what it secured and what it was watched by. Forgive us. Pull us back to the center, not with condemnation, but with the same kind of amazement that fills the unfallen worlds when they look at it, the amazement that something that costly was done for something as small and broken as us. We pray for every person watching this message right now. We do not know which country they are in, which room they are sitting in, what weight they carried into this video. But you know. You know the one who came to this message from the Disclosure News, feeling something they could not name, and needing a framework to hold what they were feeling. You know the one who has been Adventist for 40 years and who watched this message wondering whether their faith still has the fire it once did. You know the one whose marriage is breaking, whose body is failing, whose child is gone from the faith, whose bank account is at zero, and whose courage is almost there too. For every one of them, for all of us, because none of us is exempt from the weight of walking faithfully in a world like this one, we ask for the grace that the cross declared available, not the grace that overlooks sin, the grace that overcomes it, the grace that makes the image of Jesus visible in human faces in a fallen world that desperately needs to see it. The grace that turns ordinary faithful days, strung one after another across the years, into a life that the unfallen worlds observe and in which they see the answer to the great controversy's central question. Yes, grace is that powerful, love is that real. God can be trusted, completely, always. We intercede for every prayer request in the comments of this channel. Every name, every situation, every burden that was left there in the hope that someone would pray over it. We lift every one of them to you now, Lord. Not with elegance, but with earnestness. Not with the language of formal intercession, but with the simple confidence of people who know their Father hears. Meet them in the specific places where they need you most. Show up in the ways that only you can. And remind them, whatever they are carrying today, that the same God who secured the unfallen worlds at the cross has not forgotten about them on this one. Lord, prepare us for what is coming. The next release, the next escalation of the disclosure conversation, the next wave of wonders designed to move a vulnerable world toward a deception of unprecedented sophistication. Prepare us with the depth of word that makes deception recognizable. Prepare us with the kind of character that does not bend when the pressure is greatest. Prepare us with the Sabbath truth that anchors us to the creator of those worlds that the government files are only beginning to acknowledge. And prepare us with the hope that is the heartbeat of the Adventist message, the certain, glorious, imminent hope of the return of the King of every world, coming in the clouds of heaven with power and great glory, to gather the people he died to rescue and take them home to a universe where the great controversy is over, and the answer is settled, and the joy is unending. That day is coming. It is closer today than it was yesterday, and the unfallen worlds know it too. In the name of Jesus, Amen. Before you close this message today, I want to leave you with something to carry. The unfallen worlds did not need the cross for themselves, but they will never stop being amazed by it, and they are watching to see if we understand what we have been given. Here is my final question for you, and I want your honest answer. In your daily life, and not in church, not in a Bible study, but in the ordinary moments of the ordinary day, do you feel like someone who is being watched by a universe that cares how this story ends? Tell me in the comments, because I think the way you answer that question shapes everything else about how you live. If this message reached somewhere deep today, please share it right now with someone who needs it. There are people in your world who are watching the news about these disclosures and feeling the vertigo of a universe suddenly larger than they were prepared for. You have something to give them that the news anchors do not. The map, the framework, the story. Give it to them. The Lord bless you and keep you. May his face shine upon you and give you peace. And may you walk through this week as someone who knows that every faithful step is being seen by a God who loves you and by a universe that is rooting for you to make it home. Until we meet again, or better still, until we meet in the world that has been prepared for those who are faithful.